and that's all they know about each other. The point of the movie is that it's this like rushed out of nowhere romance. Is it real? Can it work? And I think as an audience, not knowing any more than that and kind of like meeting these characters in that moment makes the kind of whirlwind nature of it a lot more effective. It's really interesting to sort of sit there and be sold and convinced by this relationship that has literally only been around for like a week. Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I am dying to talk to you all about the new film Anora from Sean Baker, one of the year's best films. I'm just going to say that from the start. I'm going to open with a spoiler-free section. It's only going to go for a few minutes, and then the bulk of this video is going to be an in-depth spoiler discussion. So hopefully you've seen the movie and we can do like a little post-game discussion about what I think of the characters, themes, what I liked, what I didn't like. For general thoughts, spoiler-free thoughts, basically the movie follows the story of a sex worker, a stripper, an escort named Annie/Anora. And basically it follows her story as she gets involved with this Ivan character. This person starts as a client and then becomes something more. It follows this whirlwind relationship she gets caught up with as Ivan is extremely wealthy. So it's this new life for her, right? It's almost this like Cinderella story. I'm not going to give away any more than that. That's as much as you should know. That's the basic setup, because the rest of this story is just so fascinating, so funny, so tragic. It is one of the funniest movies of the year, but also one of the most devastating. It feels incredibly real time. The events of the film take over place of like a week or so, and it feels like at the end of the movie, you're getting back from like a holiday. I can't explain it any better than that. It feels like real time. The film is only 2.5 hours, but as you're watching it, it's just so immersive, and it feels like you're going on this insane trip with them. You're experiencing the world with Anora in real time almost. Now, yes, again, obviously it is in real time, but the film just does such a good job of like sweeping you up in the moment. Like all these conversations go on for so long, but the pacing never feels boring. It's beautifully well shot. The music is great. The soundtrack is excellent. And the lead performance from Mikey Madison here is incredible. You'd probably know her from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She's also in some of the Scream movies. She's fantastic. She's one to watch. She is incredible in this movie. And this is a movie, we're living in a post-Poor Things world. This is a movie that is incredibly interested in sex, in power dynamics, and kind of the transactional nature of love. What is love and sex when you're paying for it? Can love be involved with sex when you're paying for it? Like all of these things are explored really, really well in the movie. I just think it's so well done, and I think it absolutely brings it home in the last chunk of the movie. If you're not feeling this movie for a while, I totally get it, but there is no way the last 30-40 minutes don't win you over. I absolutely love where this movie went. The whole movie, I was sort of sitting there like, yeah, this is probably going to be in my top 10. This is really good. Like objectively, this is really good. But it was the final 30-40 minutes that just completely knocked it out of the park for me and made the rest of the movie even better. One final thing to note is if you like Uncut Gems or Good Time or The Curse from the Safdie brothers, I think you'll like this movie. The way the conversations are handled and executed, it is very kind of like up close and personal. People are constantly yelling over each other, talking over each other. You're trying to keep track in a really immersive way. And I think it's refreshing to see a film that genuinely feels very fly on the wall. I feel like the film treats sex work with a lot of respect and a lot of empathy and a lot of understanding. It's not even saying that this is necessarily a life you should feel bad for her for having. It shows that there is sort of this level of control that she sometimes feels. I think the movie does a very good job of not glamorizing anything we see in the movie, but also not stigmatizing anything we see in the movie. It's kind of up to you to interpret what Annie finds joy in and what she doesn't like. And it's just really well done. I've seen a lot of criticisms of the movie talk about the fact that they wish we knew more about Annie, but in my opinion, that's kind of missing the point of the movie. In my opinion, the movie is exploring this kind of like quick whirlwind relationship between Annie and Ivan, and I think you're meant to see Annie through the eyes of Ivan for a substantial chunk of this movie, and I think you are meant to see Ivan through the eyes of Annie, Anora, right? In my opinion, that's sort of what you're meant to get from the movie. We don't have much backstory for Ivan except for what we learn throughout the movie, and we don't have much backstory for Annie aside from what we learn throughout the movie, and I think that's because the movie is following these two meeting and that's all they know about each other. The point of the movie is that it's this like rushed out of nowhere romance. Is it real? Can it work? And I think as an audience, not knowing any more than that and kind of like meeting these characters in that moment makes the kind of whirlwind nature of it a lot more effective. It's really interesting to sort of sit there and be sold and convinced by this relationship that has literally only been around for like a week, you know? But by the end of the movie, you are properly kind of emotionally moved by where this movie takes you. So let's talk about full spoilers. Do see this movie. Now it's time for the full spoiler section. Hi guys, just while I've got you, I do memberships for this channel. I would love if you could consider getting one. It really helps out the channel and helps me grow. What's included in the membership is once a week, I am doing a sort of book club where I'm talking about a TV show. Currently, I'm covering Tell Me Lies season 1. I'm covering an episode a week. After that, I'll let members vote on which show I cover next. On top of that, every 3 to 4 weeks, I also do a quick podcast talking about everything I've seen and watched that I don't have time to do full videos on. So you basically get my thoughts on everything I've seen and watched. This is all for a small cost and it really helps the channel. If this sounds interesting to you at all, please consider getting a membership. Thank you so much, and back to the video. So as I was saying, I really appreciate the way we are living in a post-Poor Things world. This movie is full of very explicit sexual scenes, but I think the way they're done always feels necessary to the story. It's a very interesting way it's handled because a lot of the times it's communicating something. A lot of the sex early on in the movie, it feels like it's very much in Ivan's favor. It's very much whatever Ivan wants. And as the relationship becomes more romantic and less transactional, she moves from being his escort for hire to an actual romantic partner. You see the sex itself starting to change. She starts being more vocal about what she wants or what would feel better for both of them, etc., etc. I also think, yeah, as I was talking about before, I don't think this movie is necessarily trying to show how hard of a life it is to be a sex worker or what an unfortunate job it is to have. It seems like the movie is actually interested in showing, hey, she's like good at what she does. Of course, he wants to pay this much money to have her around. There are a lot of jokes that are sort of like in her favor. For example, when Ivan says that he gladly would have paid $30,000 for her for the week rather than $15,000. But on top of that, like there's a massive emphasis on how almost like overwhelmed he is by the experience of like hiring her as an escort that he is. Like he can't believe, like he seems to feel lucky even though he's paying her, which is like kind of refreshing compared to how we usually see sex work portrayed. Like there's this kind of youth and excitement attached to it that makes you get why she kind of finds him endearing. And also it feels like a more empowering dynamic than what we usually see portrayed in these sort of like movies. So let's talk about that moment, right? There's a moment where he asks Annie to basically, you know, be exclusive to him. He'll pay her $15,000 basically so she can join him on this trip and they can just basically have sex all the time, right? And it's really interesting because this seems like an awesome deal. You know, basically she gets to sit around, she gets $15,000 for the week, I think it was, and they have sex a lot. And then she just sits there and watches him play video games and just like sits there nestled on his arm, under his arm while he's playing video games. And like, if you're getting paid $15,000 for that, that looks awesome. And I think the reason this looks awesome and part of what the movie is trying to get at is this little section feels like the honeymoon phase of a relationship. It's not the usual dynamic of creepy old businessman making her do gross things, and because he's paying her, she has no say in the matter. It feels like he's kind of rather virginal and like having this awakening with her. And even though, yes, he is paying, it doesn't feel like this massive gross power imbalance. It feels like there's a mutual respect and concern there in these early moments. It's this like exciting dynamic where, yes, he's still paying her. So the frequency of whenever I want it is kind of there. However, it seems like she's mutually on board and kind of interested in both the sex and just like hanging around him, right? And obviously the $15,000 doesn't, you know, hurt his case. But I think what this movie absolutely crushes, and one of the most interesting parts of what this movie is exploring, is where these lines kind of become blurred or how these expectations sort of change as the relationship goes from something he is paying for, like sex, to an actual marriage, right? He proposes to her. I assume at that point, he's not going to keep paying her for her time. And it's interesting because part of the appeal to Annie is the fact that, like, obviously she's entering this insane lifestyle. She's his wife, so it represents this escape from, like, you know, her shitty house to like this unbelievable mansion, and that is part of the appeal. Let's not get it twisted. However, she does seem really in love with Ivan, and for a while, Ivan seems really into her. But I guess what I find interesting is then after they get married, he continues to like, have her under his arm while playing video games, be a bit dismissive about certain conversations. There's a phone call that happens and she goes, "Have you told your parents about us? Why do you keep ignoring their calls?" And he talks to her in a way where it's like, oh, he clearly doesn't want her getting involved. He clearly doesn't want her knowing more than she needs to. And this makes sense if she is someone who's just getting paid to have sex with him, but now she is his wife, so he should be telling her these things. It seems like almost he proposed to her without realizing that then means she isn't exactly like there as a yes girl, and there is now more emotional involvement and involvement in each other's lives. Telling an escort like, please don't comment about whether I'm answering my phone or not is a bit more fair than when it's a partner who is concerned that you're keeping her hidden and hushed away, even though it is a proposal and an engagement and a wedding that you should be excited to tell people. It seems like he wants to reserve the right to treat her as a sex worker, even though he didn't really do that while she was a sex worker to him. It seems like now he wants to set up some client-like boundaries, but it's like, you're in a relationship now. And it's one of the most fascinating parts of this movie is sort of watching as their relationship shifts from being paid just to have sex with him to something more emotional, whether he is treating her in the right way, how much actually really changes, especially if part of the reason she's drawn to this relationship is his wealth and his money. Like, the lines get really fascinating. And I think the movie is very much interested in exploring this. I don't think I'm off base, because given the fact that the ending directly feels like a commentary on the fact that she sees love as transactional and sex as transactional, the ending very much is talking about that. I think it's very valid to kind of like watch throughout the movie as this sort of like shifts for her and Ivan. Now, am I the only one that thought initially Ivan was going to come back? There's a point in the movie, right, where Ivan runs away and abandons her, and you're sort of sitting there with her for a while in denial, being like, he's coming back, right? Like, surely, like, this can't be the end of their relationship. Then he doesn't pick up her calls, and I'm like, fuck, oh no, poor thing. And you're just waiting throughout this entire movie for something to go right for her, and it's kind of in the back of your head that's probably not going to work out, but like, surely. Because we're spending so much time in these sections of her defending Ivan, trying to find Ivan. That is one thing I will say. Even if you want to have the read that she's obviously drawn to Ivan's money and drawn to this new life that's presented to her, I do think she loves Ivan. The way she talks about him, the way she sticks up for him, the way she believes in their love. Maybe it's meant to evoke us going, oh, honey, oh, you really thought. But like, no, she really does seem in love with Ivan, which makes it just so earth-shatteringly sad at the end of the movie, right? Now, yes, at a certain point, I think everyone in the audiences realizes that Ivan, to him, this is just, he's playing with her feelings. He's playing with her expectations. She's just another kind of object that he can play with and discard and abandon at a certain point. Whereas for her, this was an escape, right? This was a really exciting prospect for her. And that's really sad and disappointing. Also, just some neat little analysis while I'm editing. I also think like the way we initially see him treat his objects, treat his mansion, break things, not really take care of these incredible gifts he has around him, almost represents how he treats Anora, right? Anora inevitably ends up being another object to him that he can just discard, not take proper care of, and not really think about it too much because of this life of wealth at a young age that he's experiencing. He's not really taught the value of things. The same way rich parents often talk about, like, oh, I don't want to just buy my kid every single car they want because they won't look after it the way, I would have grown up. It's almost the same thing. Like, he sees her as just this like thing that he can like abandon, like the way he probably abandons his clothes and his cars and doesn't look after the mansion he's living in, etc., right? He doesn't even care to find the ring that he spent like $1 gazillion on. Like, it just doesn't occur to him. But I think the worst thing here is it's one thing to sort of like be like, yeah, I misled you, and unfortunately we can't actually get married. My parents aren't letting me. Of course this wasn't going to work, but I'm really sorry. I could have handled this better. He offers no apology, but on top of that, he ridicules her and shames her for believing in him, for believing in their relationship. The line that got the biggest reaction out of my theater was when he says like, are you stupid? Of course we're not getting married. after she's been sitting there and defending him and trying to find him and trying to make things right for him, that's all he can say to her. Not even like, I'm so sorry, like this isn't how I wanted it to go. It almost seems like he wanted it to go this way, right? Like, have fun, lead her on, get all the sex I want, and then just, discard her, whatever. Like, that's the thing, right? The whole movie, I thought, oh, maybe it's going to be this tragic story that the parents don't let them get married and it's kind of forcing his hand. But he almost just seems impartial to her feelings and goes, yep, this is what my parents want. Deal with it. What are you, stupid? Really tough moment to watch. And it's what makes the movie so interesting. I was really expecting a tragic love story, two people that couldn't be, Romeo and Juliet. But instead it's, she's Juliet, but he ends up just being a shit dude, right? Which is really unfortunate. And it's interesting, right? Because she sees Ivan as a really fun client, a client she can connect with and have fun with, someone who sees her. She sees Ivan as an escape from her life, as an escort and a stripper. But in the end, he ended up being worse than clients, right? Like, at least with clients, you know what they want, all right? They want to pay X amount of money to see you do X, Y, Z, or to perform X, Y, Z on them. And I'm sure you get a fair share of shitty clients, but at least you know what you're getting into. Whereas with Ivan, he presented himself as someone who really cares about her, really loves her, sold her on the idea of getting married, sold her on the idea of wanting to be with her forever, only to just like ridicule her when she actually buys that dream. And like, I don't know, what would you pick? Because I know I would pick being a sex worker over being love bombed on this massive of a scale. And then this brings us to Igor, I believe his name was. He's one of the henchmen that is tasked with like trying to like negotiate the annulment, and eventually he helps tie her up. And I thought their relationship was absolutely hilarious. I've seen a few debates on whether he kind of just like feels bad for her or genuinely likes her. I got the vibe that he kind of really likes her personality. He like Googled her name throughout the movie. Like, you see him really looking out for her and kind of connecting with her in a way that the other henchmen don't. And I thought the ending of this movie was just so powerful, where after she completely gets fucked over by Ivan and his parents, he offers her the ring. He saved the ring. He didn't give it back to anyone. He offers it to her as almost like, go sell this, get some money for it. And she has no idea how to thank him for this other than having sex with him. And this could have been a pretty good ending. Like, this in itself would have been pretty good, but it peaks in the moment where Igor goes to like caress her face and make it more loving, right? Clearly showing that he does have some romantic interest in her. Tries to make it loving, tries to make it sensual sex rather than just fucking. And she doesn't know how to handle that. That's not how she does this. This isn't what she was signing up for. She was signing up for a thank you in the only way she knows how, especially after everything Ivan's done. And the fact that he's showing her genuine, authentic emotion and love completely cracks her. And she starts bawling her eyes out while the windscreen wipers are going and the movie ends. So good. Genuinely so good. I love the ending to this movie. It completely brought it home. I could have sat in the sound of those windshields. I just think the movie crushed it. Like, it absolutely crushed it. Because you're sitting there at the start of the movie and you're like, whoa, a lot of sex, a lot of talk about sex work. Where's this going? And it abandons that for a while, only to hit you with this at the very end. And it just feels like the whole movie comes together, in my opinion. I also absolutely loved when we finally meet the parents. And yeah, there's just not one shred of, oh, sorry for our fuck up son. It's established early on that they're not the greatest parents to Ivan. They're not particularly friendly to him. The fact that they look down on her for her line of work, kind of have some disdain with her, don't even like apologize for what the son's done at all, is just insane to me. I really thought at least one of the parents would have said something, but no. And that's why Ivan has been raised to be such a little shit that just uses people and discards them. And yeah, the dad laughing, yeah, it got a laugh out of me too, but mostly it was just sad. And the mum was like a real piece of work, I thought. I think the movie opens up a lot of really interesting questions about like, what would you tolerate in a relationship if a certain lifestyle is being afforded to you? Would you ignore a bunch of red flags? Was this behavior normal? Was it just this insane whirlwind? Does the fact that they start off as escort and client kind of change their relationship with loving sex as that relationship would have continued? Would the relationship have ever made it if the annulment wasn't forced, or was he always planning on wasting her time? If the parents never tried to like strongman him and annul this marriage, would he eventually have just got bored with her anyway and ended the relationship because he just wants a new plaything? Because in my opinion, that very well might have happened. Maybe he was just into her because he liked having sex with her, or did he see her as more of a person? Because in my opinion, I drank the Kool-Aid. I was like, oh, he does really like her. But then the way he treated her at the end made me go, you know what? Maybe he just wanted someone that he could have sex with all the time. And then the moment she didn't want to have sex with him in like a long-term relationship or said no or whatever, he would have discarded her, right? Because he can afford to do that. All these questions are really interesting, and it leaves you with these questions similar to what Annie is probably feeling, right? Because their relationship never grew past that week or two. We never got to see this. So it's interesting to wonder, would their relationship have eventually died? Would he have abandoned her? What would the relationship of like sex, love, and intimacy have been like between these two? Super interesting. Absolutely love this movie. One of the best of the year. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and have a lovely day. Thank you.